My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
The people at KPMG make the difference for their clients. Talented teams leveraging the right technology to uncover insights that illuminate opportunity. KPMG teams together with their clients, working shoulder to shoulder with them to help grow and transform their enterprise. Are you ready to make the difference together? Go to visit.kpmg.us/transformation to learn more.
Want to listen to this episode ad-free? Head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. For a limited time, we are offering free 1-week trials to our Patreon, just so you can see all of the exciting audio and video episodes that you get to unlock as a Patreon member. And as an ITBR Professor member, which is $10 a month, you receive access not only to our audio and video episodes, but also our monthly book club. This month, we are reading The Book of Gothel, a retelling of Rapunzel through the witch's eyes by Mary McMinn. Join us virtually on July 21st at 5 p.m. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify. And please mention the podcast to one of your friends. It really helps get the word out there, and it allows me to continue getting really exciting guests, Mary to continue her True Crime and Academia show, and Christian Garcia to continue to co-host our rewatch show, whether it be Smash or Queer as Folk. And we are now on YouTube, so you can listen to the podcast on YouTube. So if you're a YouTube lover, we have you covered there as well. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Hey, true crime friends. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime in Academia. I am your host, Mary DePippi. I hope you all had a wonderful week this week. I did, for the most part. I mean, it was just a normal week. I did change the book I'm reading. I know I think the last episode I said I was reading Tender is the Flesh. But yeah, it's pretty gruesome. It's difficult and disturbing to read. And normally I can handle that stuff, but I'm just not in the mindset for it right now. So I put a pause on that. And instead, I'm reading The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. It is absolutely incredible. I'm on page 176, 177. So I'm just about halfway through. Less than halfway through, but it is really good so far. So highly recommend. Of course, it's another thriller type book. But it's not, at least as far as I can tell, there isn't any sort of supernatural elements in it. But yeah, I'm very excited. It's one of the new books I got from when I was down the shore in Wildwood. I got a couple of those. My boyfriend / life partner, whatever you want to call him. We've just been together for a very long time. We went down the shore for a long weekend and over Memorial Day weekend, and we had such a great time. But we stopped at this cute little bookstore, secondhand bookstore that was there. And like I said, I got a few books. I also got a couple of books by Frida McFadden, I believe is her name. Of course, they're not near me right now, so I can't even look at them. But yeah, so I will keep you posted on which one of those I read next. And of course, if I finish this book by Riley Sager by the time we get to part 2 of our case for the next 2 weeks. So if you saw on social media, then you already know we are covering the Elan School. I have been wanting to cover this topic for quite some time, just reform schools in general, but specifically I want to go into the Elan School. If you've been paying attention to what's going on with like Paris Hilton and all of the work that she has been doing to really destroy the troubled teen industry because it is inherently abusive. So, yeah. It's horrific what happens in these schools. But we're going to take a quick little break, and then we will get into today's episode.
Earning your degree online doesn't mean you have to go about it alone. At Capella University, we're here to support you when you're ready. From enrollment counselors who get to know you and your goals, to academic coaches who can help you form a plan to stay on track. We care about your success and are dedicated to helping you pursue your goals. Going back to school is a big step, but having support at every step of your academic journey can make a big difference. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
While it's still summer, and I hope so many of you out there are enjoying beach days, I know that while I'm at the beach, I'll have a thought pop into my mind like, wait, what am I going to assign on my syllabus? What books do I want my students to read? I know if you are a college educator listening right now, or a student, or someone who just really enjoys and values academic writing and academic topics, I have a press that you need to know about. It's called Broadview Press, and it's an independent press. I've had a few of their writers on the podcast, including Dr. Sid Dobrin, who was recently on the podcast to talk about how artificial intelligence is changing the game for humanities education. Soon, I'm going to have Dr. Andrea Sullivan Clark on to talk all about philosophies on Turtle Island, especially indigenous philosophies. And what does she think about how pop culture looks at Native American narratives? If you are looking for a text to assign your students in the humanities classroom, Broadview Press has you covered. They have a book that just came out called Academic Writing Now, a brief guide for busy students. It is designed to cover the basics of a college writing course in a concise, student-friendly format. Each chapter concentrates on a crucial element of composing an academic essay. It is available as an ebook for under $30, and it includes readings on contemporary issues like AI, climate change, and campus life. I'm so excited because Broadview Press has released an exclusive discount code, Ivory Tower, for 20% off your BroadviewPress.com order. That's Ivory Tower for 20% off. Make sure you follow them on Instagram at Broadview Press. Enjoy all of your reading. After Pride Month is over, sometimes it can be hard to find our favorite LGBTQ books, TV shows, films, even theater experiences. Well, don't worry, because I have the magazine for you. It is called The Gay and Lesbian Review, and their latest July and August issue just got released. It's called Sanctuary. Well, here is what editor Richard Snyder Jr. just described about the latest issue. He writes, The impulse for any minority to seek out safe spaces or sanctuaries exists in proportion to the oppression they suffer in their social world. From the catacombs of Rome to the colony of Plymouth, the upshot of this quest is well attested. Members of sexual minorities have undoubtedly been forming their own private communities for centuries. Would Plato's Symposium be an early example? But it was only in the 19th century that sexual identity became a criterion for forming associations of like minded individuals. Well, this issue has everything. An article about Andy Warhol's factory, an article about how Nantucket became a gay haven, how a lesbian art colony formed in St. Augustine, even how a gay bar in San Antonio fought back and won for recognition of the LGBTQ community. So, the ITBR is so excited to partner with the Gay and Lesbian Review, who is offering an exclusive discount code. Head on over to glreview.org, click subscribe, and enter the promo code ITBR50, that is ITBR50, to receive 50% off any print or digital subscription. And make sure you follow at the GL Review on Instagram to see all of their latest news. I hope you enjoy your reading.
The Elan School was founded in 1970 by a former drug addict named Joseph Ricci and a child psychiatrist named Dr. Gerald Davidson. The Elan School was to be a therapeutic boarding school that focused on behavior modification for troubled teens. The school would wind up closing in 2011 and would face a number of lawsuits from former students due to the horrific abuse that went on inside that supposed school. Joseph Ricci was born to Italian immigrants in 1945 in Port Chester, New York. Now, Joseph was mainly raised by his maternal grandparents, and at some point during his childhood, his mother signed custody over to them. He was constantly in and out of trouble growing up, and by the age of 12, he was already addicted to drugs. And eventually, he became addicted to heroin. At 18 years old, he was arrested for robbing a mail truck, and he was given the choice: spend 7 years in jail or go to a rehab facility and get sober. Joe chose rehab, a place called Daytop Village. Now, Joe thrived in rehab and considered himself to be one of Daytop's greatest success stories. After completing his time in rehab, Joe realized that he wanted to be a leader in this field because it left such an impression on him, like everything that he went through in rehab and the therapy and things like that. Like it really changed him, and he wanted to work in the rehab industry and wanted to also help others, just like how he was helped. Joe was described as being charming and enigmatic. People were naturally drawn to him. One of those people was Dr. Gerald Davidson. Now, Dr. Davidson was a child psychiatrist working at Massachusetts General Hospital and was a lecturer at Harvard University. Somehow these two met. I couldn't find exactly how, but the two hit it off and realized that they had a lot in common and had the same goals. Between Joe's experience in rehab and Dr. Davidson wanting to do more with, troubled children and just the psychiatric field with, children's psychology specifically, the two became a good fit somehow. However, why a working psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, and a lecturer at an Ivy League school, one of the most well-known Ivy League schools, would want to team up with, and this is no judgment on Joe by any means, or any addict. in general. But just the fact that he's choosing to team up with a recovering addict to start a type of therapeutic and reform boarding school is just very strange to me. Again, no shade to Joe or anyone who is a recovering addict. That is not meant to be a slight. It is just, I'm just pointing out that it's an odd choice. Again, though, I couldn't find any documentation as to why Dr. Davidson would pretty much pick up and leave his life and work at all these other places to start the Elan School. But personally, and I'm generalizing, I would think he might want to be a part of something that's different, maybe wanting to be his own boss, in the hopes of maybe achieving some sort of prestige in the psychiatric community. In other words, maybe his ego. But again, that's just my opinion. Also, Joe is very, charismatic and enthusiastic. So Dr. Davidson was most likely very charmed by Joe. And Joe probably charmed him into doing this venture with him. Joe and Dr. Davidson eventually would secure an investor and purchased a former hunting lodge on 33 acres in Portland, Maine to set up their school. They decided on the name, the Elan School, which in French means momentum and energy.
It's officially beach season, which means I need all of my favorite Bath and Body products, but this time I need beachy scents. Well, my favorite Bath and Body boutique, the Soapbox NY, has me covered. From Farmhouse Fresh, my favorite company for all things face masks and retinol creams, to Finchberry, a beautiful bar of soap that looks like a slice of cake. I especially love the emerald one because it reminds me of the Wizard of Oz. I also love Wavertree in London. They have summer cocktail scents like peach Bellini, Prosecco, and so much more. They also have a blending bar with over 200 essential oils. So Janine, the co-owner, she knows my favorite scent is French vanilla and almond. So I've had the body wash, the bubble bath, the body lotion. If you don't live on Long Island, which I don't live on Long Island anymore, I still am getting my favorite products because the Soapbox NY has an extensive website, as well as an Instagram and TikTok where you can place your orders by just DMing Janine. So if you do live on Long Island, definitely make a day trip out to Port Jefferson. It's a beautiful beach town. So you can follow the Soapbox NY on Instagram and TikTok. That's at the Soapbox NY. And you'll see all ways to contact them. I hope that you enjoy all of their products as much as I do. I now have gotten all my family and friends addicted to the Soapbox NY. So if I can get more of you out there addicted to their Bath and Body boutique, the better. Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and when I'm not here with a podcast microphone in the ITBR, I am consulting with several clients. I have small business clients where I provide them social media strategies. I have writing clients. I've worked on college admission essays. I've worked on a graduate student's thesis. I've worked on journal article editing. And I also have worked with those who are creating a podcast or who have a podcast on social media and ideas for how to get their podcast out there and trying to target their audience. So if you are interested in any of my consulting services, you can just reach out to me at ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com or search Ivory Tower Boiler Room on Google, and you will see my phone number. So feel free to give me a call. The first hour is $30, and then we'll figure out what plan works for you after that. Okay, now back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Were you a fan of the TCM, Turner Classic Movie Network, and you couldn't wait to see what classic movie they were going to premiere? And when you went to Hollywood/MGM studios in Disney World, you would always go to the Great Movie Ride. I absolutely loved the Great Movie Ride, especially when we landed in the Wizard of Oz scene and the Wicked Witch of the West came out from a heap of smoke and confronted Dorothy and Glinda. Well, I have a podcast for you. My good friend Christian Garcia's podcast is called That Old Gay Classic Cinema. So he combines classic cinema analysis with a queer study angle. So some of his recent episodes include Singing in the Rain, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Sunset Boulevard with our good friend Janine Cucci, the co-owner of the Soapbox NY, Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, The Philadelphia Story, and so much more. You can listen to his podcast wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. And every Friday, I release a new That Old Gay Classic Cinema episode because he is now part of the ITBR network. I am now releasing his episodes on the ITBR podcast. So make sure that you have a listen because I was on his first episode talking all things The Sound of Music, which, if you didn't know, I was Captain Von Trapp when I was in high school. So make sure you follow him on TikTok and Instagram at That Old Gay Classic Cinema and rate, subscribe, do all the things, and please help support my friend Christian's podcast. I know you're going to love it.
Now, initially, the school was not meant as a reform school for troubled teens. Instead, it was supposed to be a drug rehab, or at least that's how it started out. But as time went on, they eventually shifted their focus to troubled adolescents. And it was seen by Joe as like the last resort for many parents, this Elan School. Wealthy parents, to be exact, because tuition at the Elan School would run parents upwards of $50,000 per year. Not all students, though, were sent by their parents. Some were sent in place of criminal sentences. And then, of course, the state would have to pay that. Now, I don't know if that's cheaper than sending them to juvenile hall. I mean, granted, I think we overjail people in this country and definitely do not focus on a rehabilitation aspect in our prison systems. But specifically for children, like, I just want to point out that I'm not sure what the cost would be and why they would put a child there. I don't know if it's, the court's way of showing mercy or if it's possible that it's just cheaper. Now, while some students were dropped off by their parents at the school, some were literally snatched out of their beds at night by like 4 huge dudes and thrown into a van. Like, literally, the school would work with the parents to do this and essentially create a kidnapping type situation. I mean, sometimes it was out of their beds, sometimes it was from school. Jesus Christ, if that isn't traumatizing, I don't know what is. Other so-called reform schools do or have done things like this. If you've seen Paris Hilton's documentary and like biography on her time in the reform school that she was at and the abuse that went on there, she actually explains that this happened to her. Like, her parents worked with the school, or the school told her parents that this is what they were doing, and 4 dudes literally came, took her out of her bed, and threw her in a van, I guess with other students, I think. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, so apparently that was a common way of getting your kids to this school. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. And again, this is like middle school, high school children they're doing this to. I just want to point it out there. I mean, I also feel like you don't need to be like a certified licensed therapist to know this. But I don't think that by creating trauma, you're going to cure bad behavior, some of which probably caused by trauma, Joe's methods of supposed treatment had roots in an anti-drug organization turned church/cult, Synon, or the Church of Sinon. And, you know, if we've been here before, we know that's a guesstimate of that pronunciation. But we're just going with it. So, you know. So Sinon, or the Church of Sinon, was originally known by the name Tender Loving Care. And this group, like anti-drug organization, was founded in 1958 by a guy named Charles E. Diedrich Sr. Sorry, I guess he had a junior or whatever. I don't understand why people name their children after themselves. It just doesn't make sense to me. But it seems very narcissistic. At least that's how I feel about it. But again, no shade to people who, like, that's just a family tradition and that's what they do. It's just my opinion. But anyway, he did this in Santa Monica, California. And like the Elan School, obviously, it started out as a drug rehabilitation program. But it centered on something called a group, quote-unquote, truth-telling sessions that were also known as the Sinon game, also known as something called attack therapy. Now, attack therapy, for those who don't know, I surely didn't before this, it involves highly confrontational interaction between the patient and therapist, or the patients between fellow patients, like one patient between fellow patients in a group therapy setting. Patients are then subjected to verbal abuse, humiliation, and denounced by the therapist or the group therapy members. So, again, I don't have a degree in psychology or anything. I'm not a licensed therapist, and I don't claim to be. However, though, I feel like most people who become drug addicts are generally dealing with feelings of shame and guilt and anger and sadness and insecurity. So I don't think that attacking them and causing all of those feelings is really going to help the situation or the person get off drugs. You're just doing the thing they're already feeling. You're just taking the drugs away from them and then telling them that this is supposed to make them feel better. I don't get it. But with the Sinon method or game, however you want to call it, there is always a harsh, authoritarian leader. And at the Elan School, that was Joe Ricci. Now, I think way before Joe started his school, this cult, or maybe not way before, but before that happened, this cult eventually, I think, disbanded. And don't quote me, I just kind of looked at it for their methods. But I think since then it has disbanded. So, of course, Joe had to make his own version of the Sinon game, right? Instead, though, he called it, more professionally, General Meeting, which instead of being a game, I would say was aptly named a punishment, in which, like the Sinon game, a student would be screamed at for at least an hour by their classmates. Now, other times, Joe would actually force students to wear humiliating signs or costumes, or would even convince students to fight each other in the ring, which was just a makeshift circle made by other students. Again, just throwing it out here, I'm not sure how that is supposed to help anyone, let alone impressionable, brains haven't fully formed children. Aside from attack therapy, students were also reportedly forbidden from taking showers longer than 3 minutes, using the bathroom for too long, which I'm assuming is deemed by the staff member allowing the bathroom time, I guess. Writing anything without permission, looking out the window, or simply annoying or bothering a staff member. Those were all things that were happening or things that could be considered punishable. What's worse is that students' accusations and concerns were almost always dismissed by the school's administrators. And until former students found the courage to speak out against the school and its horrific methods of abuse, this school would keep going, and all of these horrific methods of abuse that these students would, talk about and complain about, they were just being ignored. So next week, we are going to pick up with those cases, and including even a murder of one of the students. So with that, my loves, I hope you all enjoy this wonderful week ahead of us and a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Don't forget to follow True Crime in Academia on Instagram and TikTok and Threads at True Crime in Academia. And to listen to this episode and any of the episodes ad-free, go to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. And until next week, my loves, I will see you all later.